there. It's Genesis chapter 27, verse 34. Hello to everyone on Zoom. It's good to see you. So open up to page 158. 158. I am going to build on what Noah taught. Taught a really beautiful lesson. I'm going to take it, and by looking at it in the verses, I think it might even deepen from the beautiful message that he gave. So I'll be there in a moment, but let's set it up. I want you to think of a moment, because we've all had them, where you've experienced something, either an experience, a moment, where you simply felt there was no good alternative. There's no place to go, nothing to do. Think of that. And by the way, as I was writing the sermon, my list got long. I don't know what to do. There's nothing to do there. There's no alternative. There's no other possibility. This is the rules. This is the way things are. Can't change. It's a problem that is intractable and unsolvable. And I think of those moments when I just couldn't find a different way, when no alternative made sense. And then sometimes, very rarely, at the moment, something will come to me that says there is a different way. Often it's in retrospect. And sometimes it's learning from saying, gosh, I could have handled it differently. And I didn't see it at the time. But in retrospect, when that moment repeats itself as it does, I get to live it differently. You get to live it differently. And here's what it requires. It requires something that's almost impossible. It requires us to break free from what we thought the rules were. It requires us to say, the way I've always considered this might not be right, and there's alternative. It requires us to veer from conventional wisdom, where everyone is telling us one thing, and we think that's the only way to do it. But there really is another way. I think Isaac had just that moment. He had a moment, and I think his response leaves us with such important lessons. So I want to go back to that famous story that Noah taught. It's the one of great deception, where Isaac thinks his life is coming to an end, so he summons his eldest son. He summons Esau, and he says, go hunt. And Esau was a very skilled hunter. And prepare it just the way I like it, and then I will give you the bracha nafshi, my innermost blessing of my soul. But standing at the doorway was Rebekah, Esau and Jacob's mom. And Rebekah, for whatever reason, we can debate. Noah's interpretation was that she had heard a prophecy and knew it needed to be fulfilled. She decided the blessing needed to go to Jacob. And she quickly began to manipulate the scene. She said, I'm going to cook something. You're going to present it to your dad. And Jacob's like, it's not going to work. He's a hairy guy. I'm not. He's got one. No. It'll all be good. She put skins on his arms to deceive Isaac, who didn't have good eyesight. And Noah gave this extraordinary drash that said Isaac kind of had his doubts. It looked at a moment like the ruse wasn't going to work. The voice is Jacob's, like, wouldn't that be a giveaway? But he didn't listen to his inner voice. He was expecting it would be a certain way. And sometimes we can't hear our inner voice saying, got my doubts. So the ruse works, and Jacob receives what he perceives, and we as the reader perceive to be the blessing. And then Esau comes back, and he discovers the blessing has been stolen, and he is bereft. Now go into the text, page 158. Because as Noah Noah described the reaction, but when you read it in the text, it's jarring. Verse number 34. Verse 34. Vayitzek Kishamo Esav et direi aviv, when he heard the words of his fathers, Yitzhak tze'aka gedolah, he screamed a tremendous scream. Umara, it was bitter. Ad me'od, it kept on going. It's translated in a way that captures a bit of it. He burst into wild and bitter sobbing. I know for me, it's impossible to read this text without feeling sympathy for Esau. It's rare in the Torah that we come across emotions described like this, bursting into wild and bitter sobbing. It just doesn't happen. But it happens here. And what those words are meant to do is to pull us, the reader, into Esau's anguish as he's cheated out of what's rightly his. But Isaac thinks, what can I do? The die has been cast. The blessing has been given. The blessing has been given. Esau begs his father, bless me too. Barcheni gam ani avi. And look at what Isaac's response is. Your brother came away with guile and took away your blessing. What can I do? By the way, if we stopped the text right there, we'd say, of course, Isaac had no choice. His hands were tied. There was but one blessing to give. What could he do? He was powerless. And I know sometimes we feel powerless. What can we do? There's nothing we can do. I've made him master over you. I've given him all his brothers, meaning you, for servants. I've sustained him with wine, with grain. What can I do for you, my son? That's verse number 37. There's nothing I can do. He kind of deepens his sense of there's no other possibility. There's no other way. Esau said, have you but one blessing, Father? Bless me too. And he wept aloud. And this to me is one of the most extraordinary moments of Jewish text. We feel that deep sense of powerlessness. Bless me too. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory writes, the scene of the two together, Esau and Isaac, robbed of what should have been a moment of tenderness and intimacy, son feeding father, father blessing son. It's deeply affecting. You feel such pain at this moment, and then the unexpected happens. Isaac, the one who through his life has been acted upon. Isaac, the one who has been traumatized. Isaac, the one who thinks he's at the end of his life when he actually still has years to live. Isaac, the one who seems so passive throughout the story. Isaac changes the narrative. Isaac finds a blessing for his son at a moment where it seemed like there was no blessing to give. Isaac comes and says, there is another way. Look, he finds a beautiful blessing for him. Your abode shall enjoy the fat of the earth, the dews of the heavens. There's enough to go around for both of you. Yes, I blessed him with material wealth. I'm blessing you with that too. And then he says something extraordinary in verse 40 that Noah pointed out. When you grow restive, you shall break his yoke from your neck. He has the power to create his own reality. Yes, Jacob will rule over him, but only as long as Esau allows it. And Esau at that moment has a choice. He can either hold on to his anger, his vengeance. He can be bitter for the rest of his life. He can mourn Jacob and Rebekah's betrayal each passing day, or he can choose to be free and make his own blessing. That's what his Father blesses him with. I can't think of a better blessing to give my children or you. You can choose to break the yoke. It's up to you. Blessing is up to us. More is in our hands than we realize. So what Noah did is he brought us two powerful interrelated lessons. One, that there might be another way. Your example was Martin Luther King in the civil rights movement. We have to just open our hearts and minds to possibilities and realize we have more choices than we think we do. That to me is the brilliance of Isaac. I want to share with you a story of a man who I just met 2 weeks ago. And he's a man who says the way we've been thinking about the Middle East doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a story of eternal warfare. It doesn't need to be a story of they hate us so much that there's no possibility for peace. The story and the narrative that we've been telling ourselves does not need to be the final story. By the way, there are pieces of that story that seem as if they're destined to continue for generations, and they may be. But might there be other ways to look at things? Might there be other things that we can build that might create seeds that will grow after some years? I want to tell you the story of Dr. David Hassan. I met him 2 weeks ago at the Z3 conference, an important gathering in our area that's put together by the Ushman family JCC. It's extraordinary. They bring thought leaders together to really reflect and say, what can be in Israel? What is? How can we understand it? How can we come together? It's extraordinary. If you have not gone, please do, because it will give you heart. It will give you thoughts. It will give you alternatives. Dr. Hassan is a renowned neurosurgeon at Duke University. He is a Palestinian American who moved to America as a teenager. The session I went with him, he said, I was 16 when I came here, and he chose to pursue the American dream. He was ambitious. There was an article about him in the J a couple weeks ago. You should read it, please. It's where I got most of the quotes from the sermon. Here's what he says about coming to America. I dedicated decades to becoming one of the premier experts in the field of neurosurgery on the world stage. My focus was singular, professional excellence and personal advancement, and he succeeded. He's a really renowned neurosurgeon. And he shared that his family, when he came over as a teenager, lived in a neighborhood where he developed cherished friendships with people from all different kinds of walks of life. And a bunch of his friends were Jewish kids. He went over to their homes. By the way, it made me think about all of my Catholic friends who came over to our home. And soon they were singing the Kiddush together with my mom and dad and me on Friday nights. You get to know each other. Your religion and your faith is something that you share, and it's beautiful. And he said he loved his Jewish friends. He loved going to the celebrations and the holidays. He felt like part of the family. And those friendships endured over the years: college, finding wives, children, professions. He shares that he was never particularly political. But then on October 7th, he felt the ground shift beneath his feet. He realized that it must have been a day of trauma for his Jewish friends. So he picked up the phone and he called them. And they didn't respond. And when I heard him share that part of the story, part of me said, oh my goodness, how sad. Friendships he felt were unbreakable were tested by collective grief and suspicion. Here's what he writes: trust dissolved. I saw in the eyes of friends not familiarity but fear. My heritage became a barrier. For the first time, I experienced what it meant to be judged not by who I am, but by where I come from. And I would imagine, had I experienced people who I cared about not returning my call, rather than saying this must be about their trauma that I need to understand with love, I might have said, forget it. Who needs them? I'm reaching out to them. I care, and they can't pick up the phone and call back. We can't share this together. Isn't that what friendship is meant to be? But that's not what he did. Dr. Hassan did not throw up his hands. He did not get frustrated. He doubled down on compassion and understanding and made a vow to reject despair and devote his efforts to rebuilding humanity. Listen to what he writes. My North Star became clear: to provide immediate relief and build bridges of hope in a world pulling itself apart. He saw a different way. Rather than going into the narrative of, they hate me, must be the only way to go, here's what he wrote. My North Star became clear: to provide immediate relief and build bridges of hope in a world pulling itself apart. So what did he do? He traveled to Israel and to Gaza. He needed to understand the pain of his friends, his Jewish friends. So we went to the kibbutzim that were destroyed. He went to the site of the Nova Festival, where a terrible massacre happened. He wanted to understand our pain. He listened to our stories. He saw and felt and heard what it meant to have loved ones who were taken hostage and being held in captivity. And then, in December 2023, after he went to Israel, felt our pain, our anguish, our helplessness. In his heart, he went to Gaza, where he could use his medical skills as a trained surgeon. He had to sign a waiver that there is a 50% chance that you will not live through this experience. And he signed it because his job is to be a healer. Listen to his words. Crossing the border was like stepping into another realm, one where time was scarce because so many lives were being lost. The cries of injured children echoed through the corridors that had once been schools and homes. I operated on dozens of severely wounded children, many of whom had lost their entire families. No medical training prepares you for this moment when a child wakes from surgery asking for a mother you know will never come. He described unimaginable scenes that just made me weep. He went into a hospital that was made for several hundred, where thousands were crowded into every corridor, every closet, into the bathroom. He operated in unsterile conditions without proper medication and tools. He saved so many lives, and he lost some as well. He returned in April of 2024. The conditions, he writes, were even more dire. Yet amidst suffering, he witnessed something extraordinary: resilience. He saw children who had next to nothing, who shared what little they have. He saw strangers comforting one another as kin. And it was those moments that he understood that war can destroy a building, but it cannot extinguish the human capacity for love. He reminded me of our shared humanity. And I needed reminding of that because I too have been traumatized. Knowing the anguish that Israel and the captives suffered, he did what he could to find out information. From his own funds, he paid people. Do you know anything about where the hostages are hidden? He said at the Z3 conference, this wasn't in the article, that the best source of information were children. And the best way to get to children was by giving them a piece of candy. He took that information, he shared it with the Israeli military officials. It's a story that's extraordinary. 2 hostages were saved because of the information that he provided. By the way, you can imagine that he was on every Hamas list to be killed. And he persisted in his efforts of healing and life-saving. Here's what happens. Compassion and care breed vision. The world changes from narrow to vistas opening up. I think that Isaac's love of Esau allowed him to see another way. That's how I read this text that I ask you to open up. By the way, I'm curious what you might think. Tell me at Kiddush, what possessed Isaac to suddenly see there's another way? Because I know me, when I'm set in this is the way it is, as a Jewish leader, as a parent, as someone who's analyzing the world, it's very hard to shift. Yet Isaac does. He shifted on a dime. How? My suggestion here is it might have been his love for his son, because love can cause us to climb the highest mountains. He found an amazing blessing in his heart. Compassion breeds vision. Surrounded by so much death, Dr. Hassan chose not to withdraw into the pain of what he witnessed and what he could not do. It caused him to imagine life. Here's what he imagined. He imagined a village, not just for one people, but for all children. Palestinian children, Israeli children who were orphaned by the conflict. He imagined a place of healing, education, joy, and safety, a village that would say to the world, we refuse to raise another generation on narratives of hate, which is the narrative that so many of us cannot see a way past. There is another way. This bold idea of building a village included a school, a pediatric field hospital, rehabilitation centers, therapy services, communities where children would be treated not as a symbol of war, but as a promise of peace. And so what did he do? He went and he shared this great idea with NGOs, UN agencies, government officials, and everyone said, it's ridiculous. No one wanted to listen to the fact that there might be a different way. Just like Isaac initially could not imagine a blessing. I'm sorry, I've only got one blessing. But he persisted. He began to muster one by one a network of Israelis and Palestinians who behind the scenes, away from politics and cameras, believed that there's something greater than revenge, and they helped him move from dreams to reality. So on July 26th, of this year, in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza, they opened the Academy of Hope. By the way, hold on to that in your memory, because I want you to leave today and donate to the Academy of Hope. It provided holistic care for 600 orphans with education, daily hot meals, medical treatment, and psychotherapy. They don't only learn math and language, they learn play, laughter, and possibility. They're not spoken to as victims, but as future leaders. And so often, at least in my education, I have lamented the textbooks where Israel is vilified and say when they stop teaching this, that's when things might change. Do you know what he teaches at the Academy of Hope? That Israel is a sovereign country that also is living in pain. There is another way. Dr. David Hassan is teaching us another way. They learn of Israel not as a villain who oppresses, colonizes, and vilified, but as a sovereign state who we can live with, next to. By the way, what's happened, of course, is that success breeds success. It's ignited a movement. Thousands of Israelis and American Jews have joined in partnership to construct a second academy, this one for 1,500 kids. Other organizations like the World Central Kitchen, Longer Tables have joined forces. They're building 2 more academies that will open soon, hopefully this month, to serve over 6,000 orphaned and vulnerable kids. What does Dr. Hassan say? Dr. Hassan says, I'm not interested in anyone but native people being part of this work on the ground. It has to be Gazans and Israelis. Talk about someone who sees another way. By the way, and when you see what might be and you start to build and people join in, other doors open. This man amazes me. They're now they're delivering baby formula, medicine, pediatric supplies. They've rescued zoo animals. that have been integrated into therapeutic programs for children. They've acquired a hospital that they're now converting into Gaza's only multi-specialty hospital. Here's his motto: we are better together. There's an antidote to hate, and it begins with a vision of connection that does not allow the extremists to define the agenda. By the way, had anyone heard of this before? I hadn't. What an extraordinary story. What an extraordinary story. What an extraordinary story of hope and what might be when you start to view the world in a slightly different way. That doesn't mean that there's going to be a quick resolution to a place with entrenched issues. That doesn't mean that terrible extremists who do terrible things will stop what they're doing. But it means that we can start to build another way. We can join together with these efforts, and we can say we are part of building another way. So we, of course, went up to him and said, "Oh, our son's at graduate school at Duke." And he said, "Give me his name and number. I will call him, invite him for spaghetti dinner." He's just a sweet man. And when we go there, we will, when you're there, come and visit. I will visit. He's not, often you think of heroes and they are unapproachable. He's just your normal, everyday neurosurgeon doing incredible work. Because normal people, you and I, can also start to view things in different ways and make a difference. We can join those efforts. When we look at the world through the eyes of compassion, we find that people are looking back at us and we find a different way. Ultimately, it's in a couple more Torah portions. After many years, Jacob and Esau come back together. And what does Jacob say to his brother? To see your face is to see the face of God. When we see the face of God and those who we saw as enemy and vowed to kill, rays of light, tiny pieces of hope, begin to pierce the darkness of war and conflict. And again, my final words are, let us join in an effort to see a new and different way. That's the gift of our forefather Isaac, finding a blessing for Esau and a precious legacy for us to embrace. Shabbat Shalom. So Noah, first, thank you for inspiring the sermon. Noah, do you know what your name means in Hebrew? No? Noah means calm, relaxed, rest. Menucha is rest. By the way, it's an ironic name for the guy who probably was running around like a crazy man on the ark. But Noah was also someone who was good when other people were not. And boy, do I see that in you. You are guided by an inner compass that does goodness. You're guided by an inner compass that does what's right and just. And maybe the word just means a little relaxed. I don't know if I'd call you relaxed. You're certainly quiet in your own way and in certain circumstance. But when the moment arises, you find your voice. And when the moment arises, you find your passion. And when the moment arises, we know you and see you, and you make a difference. May this day instill you with the confidence to have that piece of you continue to grow. May this moment show you what hard work can accomplish. May this moment and your hard work and your message of listening to your inner voice and seeing a different way be that which defines you moving forward. You've moved us, you've touched us. Your special heart has inspired us. Yesher koach. I'm going to borrow Noah for a minute, and he and I are going to go next door where we have another service, and they'll have a chance to wish him mazel tov. I'll have a chance to share this message with another group, and we'll all get together for Kiddush. So, Noah, why don't you join me?